So the finishing rate remains 100% for one of the best Canadian prospects in the world.
Let's set one thing straight about tonight. This show is for us. This was a Canadian show. This was Canadian MMA coming back strong, baby. Welcome, Mike Malott.
Welcome to UFC Unfiltered.
Please tell me that's on video. I've never been happier.
I'm made for a fucking podcast. That's dangerous. Listen to me, we're at it.
Here we start. I have a new camera, so now I'm looking at like a 3/4 of my torso, which is even worse because I ate like a fatso this week. I was in New Hampshire with Bert. We were doing these festival shows, and I just
Bert Kreischer.
Bert Kreischer. And whenever there's catering, Matt, like whenever they just have a nice catering, I just can't resist. I don't know why. I feel like it doesn't count.
You can't not be a piggy a little bit.
I can't not be a little rooting around piggy boy, and I was.
Oink, oink, my good friend. I'm sorry. You see my little cup?
What's it say? I can't. I'm going blind.
Size of my head. Well, it's what is that?
Oh, Daddy, that's very nice.
Love you, Daddy.
That's very nice.
Yeah, thank you. It was Father's Day.
I know. I traded messages. I left my father a message, and then I got a message back from him where he's going, "Yeah, it looks like it's gonna rain." Just talking to my mother, not realizing that the recording was happening. Whenever old people leave you messages, they never really know what they're doing.
That's so great. Does he text your father or no?
No, they're not good at that. They're in their 80s, so I'll call him again today. What did you think, Matt, about the card? We have Mike Malott, who had such a great win over Adam Fugitt on, I think that was 2 weeks ago at 289. What did you think of the Keith Peterson's mistake in Argueta against Lawrence? I mean, that's a very, very tough
situation. Who felt awful about that was Keith Peterson.
Yeah.
That fight was, where was it? The no contest one. Where was it?
In Vegas.
No, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the card. Which fight was it again? I'm sorry.
Oh, it was. Are you asking the main card?
No, I'm asking about the fight that happened where Keith Peterson fucked up and that's what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Keith
Dan Argueta against Ronnie Lawrence.
Yes, I see it right here. Okay.
Yeah.
I knew it was early on.
Yeah, it was
that was so unfortunate because you can't really ask any more for a first appearance like that from Argueta.
Yeah.
Argueta was looking great, and the way it if you look at the way it happened, like with Keith Peterson's point of view, a lot of times guys check the arm to see if they're like limp or not. You know, 'cause you can't really see when they're caught in a choke. So I know it's very stressful, but he had his arm up like it's about ready to tap.
Yes.
So when Keith goes to grab it, it wasn't like it was limp, and he pulled it away. So when Lawrence pulled it back, it made like he tapped.
It hit, yeah. It hit his body.
It's silly, and it's a silly mistake, but we are only human.
It was like a rubber band snap. He pulled the arm back, and it just kind of snapped and hit the body. Yeah.
I feel bad for everybody involved. At least, Argueta got the show.
Sure. People. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we have Mike Malott is in the waiting room. He's going to be with us for the whole show. We should bring him in after that amazing win he had over Adam Fugitt. I want to say it was 2 weeks ago. Yeah, he seemed to handle it pretty well. Like he didn't seem too broken up about it in the cage. He seemed like, all right, it is what it is, and back to the drawing board.
Yeah, I mean, know why? Because he knows he won. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was very close.
I'm excited to see him back. What was very close?
To tapping. I mean, it was like he knew he was close. Yeah. Well, I want to know, why can't they ever? Like, I know that, like, why can they never restart a fight? Like, why can they never? I guess once it's called, it's called. But can't they just put them back in the same position?
It's kind of that's kind of tricky, man.
I know, but these guys train so hard then to get a no contest. And hey, Mike, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Thanks for having me on.
Good. Thanks for joining us. Where are you right now? You in Sacramento?
No, I'm in Burlington, Ontario, Canada. So I've moved back to Canada for the past about 18 months. I've been living back home full time.
Okay, so are you training up there, or do you kind of go back and forth?
No, I've been training up here full time. I go back to visit the guys every once in a while. Just, that's my team for life, and love those guys, and still really close with them. So Danny Castillo's cornered me my last few fights up until this weekend. He wasn't able to make it. And then I'll actually head down with Danny Castillo to corner Andre Fili in London next month. So still really close with a lot of the guys. Just, been homesick, been wanting to live back home, and the training's really picked up around here. And I just feel really comfortable training at home, and just the feeling of being around family helps a lot too, man. Like, it makes this journey a lot happier.
Yeah, more comfortable.
Hey, yeah. Nice to meet you, first of all, Mike. Nice to meet you. And what a beautiful, what is it? High risk guillotine is what we're called. Yeah, that's what it is. Yes. Yeah, so I'm a big fan of the high elbow guillotine. It's something I was very effective with. But guys with the lankier arms, you see, like, you didn't even need to finish that with your other arm. You had that just with one arm, correct? And then you finished it off. But did you need two arms with that? I saw it wrapped up where?
No, I often won't connect hands with that. I just find body positioning is enough to secure the choke, and just putting your weight behind it is enough to get usually a pretty frantic tap. And there are benefits to having certain benefits that I find having, like with the overhook or like a floating secondary hand. So as he went to his back and I followed into mount, I think I posted my hand for a second, forehead posted on the mat, and I was going to switch to the high elbow just because we'd gotten to mount and I was securing the position. But before I was able to connect my hands, it was already really tight and he tapped. So I didn't need to secure the hands on that one.
Do you get that one a lot in training or no? It looks like it was nothing new to you.
No, that one's definitely one of my go-tos. I've had like a lot of really high level guillotiners helping me throughout my career. Like my coach is now Andre Grambois has a great guillotine. Felipe Bragio, my coach in now Hawaii, but from Sacramento. Obviously, like Uriah Faber's been famous for it, and I trained with them forever. And then one other one was I got a lot of great details from the John Donaher front headlock instructional, and that helped me a lot.
Oh yeah, because Gordon Ryan's is money at that.
Oh, that was the last one. Was I saw him? That was the first time I saw that variation. Was Gordon Ryan hit it? I can't remember who he hit it on. I think it was like a big ginger dude in EBI, but he just it was so nonchalant how he sat back, and I think he hit maybe hit a foot sweep, or maybe I'm thinking of the Keenan Cornelius match, but he hits like a foot sweeps and then steps over in a mount with it, I think. Oh man, it was just I watched it 15. Dude, I used to sit and just watch the old EBIs repeat. That's how I first got really into a lot of submissions, developing a leg lock game and developing a lot of strangles and back attacks, was just watching those EBI matches. Those were absolutely incredible.
How long were you training karate before you started jiu-jitsu?
So I started at a karate gym, but we kind of had kickboxing and MMA. So it wasn't I ever really had the gi on and climbed those ranks too much. I think I got to a green belt or something, and then they started offering more kickboxing. So I was I don't need to be doing this stuff in katas. So I'm just going to do the little jiu-jitsu I could. And, my original coach had our jiu-jitsu at the time was he had a BJ Penn textbook and I had an Eddie Bravo textbook, and we'd flip to a page and be all right, this is what we're doing today. So that was pretty cool. But it was just small town mixed martial arts. That's where, that's where the sport was at the time. It's wild to see a black belt on every corner now, because I had never met one before.
You fight. Sorry. So you're fighting at 170, and your only loss, I think, was to Dawodu, and it was 147. You had missed featherweight. You fought at 3 different weights in a relatively short period of time. Was that loss pretty much because was it hard for you to cut? Did you have a tough cut that time, and you just couldn't go that low anymore?
I mean, number one, Dawodu is and was an absolute beast, right? He had something 60 Muay Thai fights at the time, pro Muay Thai fights. So he was a really high level striker. And I think just more like ring savvy and mature as far as fighting goes. I was like young and coming up and had like some skills and some talent, but I was like a big fish in a little pond, and I wasn't used to fainting and not having guys, you know, scared of me. And, you know, I got away with stuff being the big fish in the small pond. And part of it was that mental immaturity of like, why isn't he scared of me? And it, like overthinking things, like thinking back to what was going through my head at that time. I'm like, that was way too much thinking, way too much, you know, stuff that didn't matter. There were some weird things that camp as far as injuries and stuff anyway, but yeah, the cut was absolutely brutal. I missed for the only time in my career. And yeah, that definitely didn't help. I think, you know, 1, his level of skill, 2, my immaturity, and 3, feeling like you're wearing lead boots in a cage just because you're so zapped definitely played some different hands in the outcome for sure. Right.
You know, let's take it back a little bit. I want to start. You said that you started in a small town, very small town, mixed martial arts. Yeah. How did you end up with the alpha males? How did that happen?
So I lost that fight to Dowdu and had just finished university right around that time. I kind of, you know, I was like moving back home to Ontario I was living in Halifax, Nova Scotia, training at what was called Titans at the time. It's still Titans, but Henzo Gracie Halifax now, so it's an affiliate of yours. But I was basically like, okay, I need to find what I think will be the next place I'm going to train and like the last place I'm going to train. I don't want to be a guy who jumps around and joins a new team every 2 years and is looking for like the next sizzle in the pan, you know, like I want to find a team I trust and I can build with, I can help build, and I can help, you know, build myself with them. And Alpha Male seemed like a really great team environment, not just like a gym where pros went to train. It seemed like kind of a brotherhood and like almost like the collegiate wrestling team that I never had. I never grew up wrestling. So I always admired that about wrestling. And one of my teammates from Ontario, Josh Hill, who's an elite in Bellator, really high level guy, who's on the Ultimate Fighter. He used to go down there to train. So I got their manager's number, Dave, from Josh, messaged them and just kind of showed up, and Faber, you know, showed up first day of practice, and Faber's like, so how long are you in town? I'm like, oh no, I brought a hockey bag and a gym bag. Like that's all my stuff. Like I'm living down here. He's like, oh, cool. Awesome. And so just kind of moved down there and found a spot to live pretty quickly and found a job. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to have to go to wars with like the best guys in the gym. And hopefully that gets me noticed and I kind of fit in with the guys. And that's kind of how it worked. Like just going to war right off the bat with, you know, when I was fighting at featherweight at the time, going to war with like Chad Mendez, helping him get ready for Connor, that short, like week and a half period, and going to war with like TJ Dillashaw at the time and Cody Garbrandt. You know, he had just made his debut and we were like boxing, beating each other up and you know, just having like some good gym wars with the guys. It kind of like brought me into the inner circle pretty quickly. They're like, all right, man, you're cool. Like, come hang out with us.
Mike, what happened too? There was it's almost 4 years you laid off professionally, right? It was from February 17, and then you came back and fought December of 20. And you were doing some coaching, so it wasn't like you were out of the MMA world. What made that decision for you, and what ultimately brought you back to it?
So after the February fight in 2017, I had over the next like 6 to 8 months, like several fights fall through, like some of them the absolute last minute, like the day before weigh-ins type thing. And it just like, I think that partially played a factor, but I was just starting to feel like burnt out, I guess. At the time, I just didn't want to fight anymore. Like I was looking for another fight. I'm like, okay, another fight fell through the day before weigh-ins or whatever. And I was like, okay, yeah, let's look for another one. And we were in talks to try and get another fight, you know, talking to a promotion. They were looking for guys. And I was like, yeah, I guess maybe I win this one and then hopefully UFC. And like, I remember having that thought with myself and not being excited about the opportunity to fight in the UFC at the time. I was like, I don't even really want to do that. It's like more just to do it because I set out to do it. Right. Rather than like what I really wanted to do. And I was like, well, this isn't baseball, man. Like, this isn't soccer. This isn't a game you can play. Like, this is fist fighting in a cage. Like, you need to love this. And it's not like I was making good money at the time. You know, the fight paychecks were like $800 at the time. So it was like, all right, I'm going to put all this work in just to lose money. And you know, I didn't have the desire. I didn't really want to do it. So I called Uriah Faber and Danny Castillo and kind of talked to them about it. Like, you know, I think I'm going to hang them up. I might just do some jiu-jitsu for a while and take some time off and not think about competing in MMA. And right at that time, Faber was like, well, most of the guys don't know this, but one of the head coaches of Alpha Male is leaving next month, and we'll need somebody to help guys with their striking. You're a good striker. Like, do you want to see if they'll be interested? I was like, yeah, sure. I'd been coaching like amateurs for a long time and like at UFC gyms, like recreational members. And right off the bat, a bunch of the guys wanted to work with me. So I just like got thrown straight into cornering UFC fighters. And my first 3 guys that I cornered were Teruto Ishihara, Darren Elkins, and Cody Garbrandt. And for our first 3 opponents, they were a debuting Piotr Jan, an unknown Australian at the time, Alexander Volkanovski, and TJ Dillashaw. Like,
wow.
We just had 3 absolute murderers to go up against for the first 3 fights. And I'm sitting there 0-3 after my first 3. I'm like, oh my God, like, I swear I'm not doing, like, I know we're doing the right things. I know I'm helping these guys. Like, what do we need to do? And then fast forward a couple of years, you're like, oh, okay. Like, those are some of the best fighters ever. Like, no shame there.
That's hysterical. They're thinking you're the bad luck charm. You're like, no, it's not me. You're like, this first 3 fights, get him out of the corner. No, like,
dude, seriously.
Longo would have got you the fuck out of there. Longo suspicious.
What finally brought you back though, Mike? What finally made you go, I want to do this again?
Honestly, just passion. I had been competing quite frequently in jiu-jitsu, and I got like obsessed with jiu-jitsu, and I wanted to make the ADCC chase. I did the trials in 2019 and did okay. Didn't qualify or anything, but I had a couple, had some okay matches and stuff, and did a bunch of like super fights, like Fight to Win, and other like super fight matches. I did one more in Ontario, back home. I competed against a guy I know who's Ryan Dixon, who's like a solid black belt. We went at it, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna treat this one more like an MMA fight. Like, I'm gonna get ready for it like it's an MMA fight, because the fire was kind of coming back a little bit. I'm like, maybe I will compete again someday. And it was just still like, I don't know if I actually really want to do it. It was kind of, it started to buzz a little bit more in my head. Like, maybe I will fight again someday. And then the pandemic hit like a month later, and it was just like locked in the house, going for runs, working out in the garage, like training with a couple guys at the skate park once a day, skate park by our house.
Right.
But otherwise you're just kind of sitting around. Like, it was a lot of solitude. There's a lot of time to reflect on life and see what I want out of life. And especially with the pandemic at the time, not knowing how dangerous this thing was going to end up being. It's like, life's fragile, man. I don't know how, you never know what's going to happen. Like, this curveball came out of nowhere. How many other curveballs are there? I'll be on my deathbed someday. How do I want my life to have been written? What stories do I want told about me? How do I want to look back? What will make me feel happy? And I'm like, you know what? I think I need to give this thing another real chance, a real chase. I love this sport. I love competing. I think I need to feel a little more fulfilled with the work that I've put in. I don't want to be some some old dude someday sitting on a bar stool with UFC fights on me being like, yeah, I was pretty good one day. And people, oh, did you ever fight in the UFC? Like, no. They're like, okay, well then probably weren't that good, Not that other people's opinion is like the catalyst for me going back into fighting, but still, it's like, I want to feel like satisfied with what I did in the sport. And there was some food left on the table,
Right.
There was some stuff left on the table. I wanted another shot at that stuff. So I'm really glad I came out of, that retirement, I guess, and came back to fighting. Took, first fight back, took a short notice fight. It was like 12 days notice or something against some undefeated killer at the time, and went into his hometown, moving up a weight class, 4 years off. Like, all the chips were stacked against me, and the kid came out hot for the first minute and caught me with a couple good shots. And I just stayed calm. I was like, this storm will pass. Stay calm, stay settled. Excuse me. And then he came in a little overzealous, and I dropped him with the right hand and took his back and strangled him. And I got on Contender Series after that, and then now the UFC.
talk about good shots. What about your leg kick, that body kick that you start? You started that fight off where it was like, oh, forget it. Well, you know, your opponent. I'm sorry. What was his name again? I'm sorry.
Adam Fugitt. Yeah.
Fugitt. That's the name. Fugitt.
Yeah.
Oh, he was like, fuck, start over. No, he wasn't like that. But it's one of those things where you get hit there. It's hard to have a nice poker face, you know, because you knew. Yeah. Did you knew you heard him right off the bat?
Yeah, I felt it just grazed, but I felt the toes wrap, you know, where it just like wraps in the body. You feel it like go under the ribs. And he tried to poker face it, but his elbows came down and then tried to play it off. I'm like, no. I saw that, buddy. Like, you're hurt bad right now. We're 15 seconds in and you can't breathe. Like, okay, well, I'm going to give him a little bit of pressure. I'm not going to, you know, go balls to the wall and put all my chips in. One, because we're 15 seconds into a 15-minute fight. Two, if I've hurt him once, I can hurt him again. And three, he's a dangerous dude, man. The guy was like a Muay Thai champion. He has a big right hook. He'd stopped 8 of his 9 opponents. He was solid and he was tough. Like, I've seen him take beatings and like take good shots in fights and recover well. So I'm like, okay, it's early. He's fresh. He'll probably recover quickly from this. I'm gonna, you know, measure myself a little bit. I'm not going to run in head first and get caught with some stupid counter, but I'll give him a little pressure, see if I can put him away. And if I can't, then I'll get back to picking him apart. That's, you know, that's like one notch so far. All right. I'm just going to keep adding these up. I'm going to tax the body as much as I can. I'm going to tax whatever else I see. You know, I thought the body shots would pay a lot of dividends against him because he moves his head a lot. He leans back a lot, which can make it tough to find his head, especially with how long his reach is. He's got a 77-inch reach, and he leans well and also leans hard with that right hook. So if you're overextending coming forward, it can be tough to touch his head, and it can be easy for him to counter you. So I didn't want to rush in and try and headhunt after hurting the body quite so early. I thought I could maybe freeze him up a little bit more with early body taxing, and worked out well for me. And all that was kind of one of the things that led to the finish. Was we got in kind of a kicking battle back and forth, a little bit of like a Muay Thai pissing contest. Like, he kicks me, I kick him, he kicks me, and then I faked the kick, and he went to cross check it, right? So he lifted that lead knee. He's like, oh, if you kick me, I'm going to break your foot. I'm like, no, I'm not breaking my foot. I'm breaking your jaw, buddy. So I came around with the 2 hooks and both landed quite flush. And man, that guy can take a shot though, dude, because he gets rocked. You see his eyes roll, yet before his butt hits the floor, his hands touch, and he's already like forward shifting to start wrestling up. Like, dude, you got a chin on you, man, because I cracked you pretty hard with those 2.
Yeah, it's some Michael Myers shit.
Yeah.
It's coming back up at you. Oh my God.
It's like Marvin Vettori. It's like watching Vettori.
Yeah.
I mean, how crazy is that fight? Cannonier sets I think, a significant strike middleweight record. I mean, considering all the amazing middleweights you've had besides Adesanya, Anderson Silva, so many amazing strikers. And Vettori just cannot be finished. It's fucking crazy that there are guys who exist like that.
Just a zombie. It's wild that Cannonier was able to set that record. I think I saw a post saying it was like the 4th highest significant strikes landed in the fight. The first 2 belonged to Max Holloway. The third to Rob Font versus Chito Vera, a fight he ended up losing.
Yep.
And then the 4th, it said, was Cannonier and Vettori. It's wild to think that someone that size set that record. It's not like another flyweight, right? And it's not like it's just a middleweight. Like, Cannonier fought a long time at heavyweight and light heavyweight and then came down to middleweight. The fact that he can sustain that level of output is absolutely wild.
Isn't he 39 too? I think he's 39.
Yeah,
he's that old.
Yeah, he's 39. Really? I was going to say, you got to point that out also. So
yeah.
Not only you get a record like that from a bigger guy, but a guy who's like pretty much 40, which is crazy, man.
That's wild. Yeah. Absolutely insane.
Against a guy like Vettori who just keeps coming forward too. I think Marvin won that first round, but then I think the other 4 went to Jared. It's like you're watching 2 guys kind of, you can see that they're both desperate to get another title shot. Like, those are 2 guys, like Vettori's not going down, and Jared just seems like he wants Adesanya again. Do you watch a lot of the other fights, or how much tape do you watch on a guy that you have to fight, or do you prefer let your coaches do that and not give yourself anything visual?
I prefer to study guys in my weight class outside of camp. So this is something like I just like to make a lot of notes on guys when I don't have fights. Just kind of like, okay, what would this guy do? How am I, stacking up, kind of keeping myself honest against the division and guys that I'll likely end up fighting. When I get a fight, I watch film, but I don't overstudy. I hear some guys just like watch their guy every day, all day. I'm like, look, man, I'm looking for a handful of things. I'm looking for tendencies. I'm looking for unique attributes. I'm looking for things that this guy leans on when he's in trouble. I'm looking for things that this guy uses when he's having success, or what he uses to have success. I don't need to know what he does at during every second of the fight, because I think overstudying can get you in trouble. I think one, it can develop like too much respect for your opponent or not enough. And the probably the biggest thing that I'm concerned with is no one owes me anything to stay true to their previous styles. So an example for me is like, for me, if you studied me fighting Mickey Gall as Johan Lainus, the next guy I fought in the UFC, you're like, okay, I'm fighting an orthodox boxer, basically. Like, this guy boxes and he's looking for like hooks on the inside. That's all we've got to watch out for. And then my next fight, I fought Johan Lainus, and I come out southpaw with long kicks up the middle, barely threw any punches, mostly kicks. The guy closed the distance. I took him down and strangled him. It's like, if you overly studied me and you're like, this is what we have to watch out for, this is what this guy does, just prepare for this, you fought a different fighter, right? So there's nothing to say like anyone has to fight the same style. And I'm under the assumption that everyone's training as much as I am. Everyone's trying to make the same improvements that I am. Everyone's adding new skills to their game like I am. I don't actually genuinely believe most guys are doing that, but I train as if these guys are doing everything to add new weapons to their game. And so I want to have like a well-rounded offense and defensive skill set and be able to analyze in the moment, to adjust to the things that I maybe didn't expect. Another example for me would be Rory McDonald versus Robbie Lawler. So watching that fight, I know Rory McDonald and Faraz Zahabi did a ton of film study. Like, just based on what I've heard about Faraz Zahabi, I know there was like, that guy is an MMA genius. He is laser focused. He picks fights apart. He's an unbelievable coach. I met him last week. Super nice guy. And then obviously they programmed things for Rory to be prepared for. And I think one of the things that they were expecting was, in the open stance, Robbie being southpaw and Rory being orthodox, was they were expecting the overhand left from Robbie consistently. Rory's attempt to beat that was to step straight in, head to the near side shoulder, and throw a rear elbow. And try and catch him with the elbow on the inside to, one, defend himself from the overhand, and two, to land a big elbow shot. He kept throwing that, but Robbie adjusted almost immediately and just stuck to straight lefts. So every time Rory would come in to try to catch him with the elbow, he'd walk face first into this elbow. And I saw him continually go back to that. They must have trained that a lot. Like, this is going to be like something that you're going to have. This is going to be something that you're going to be able to fall back on consistently. But Robbie made a good adjustment that negated that. And the adjustment in the fight on Rory's side, unfortunately for him, wasn't able to be made in the moment. Maybe he got rocked and like wasn't able. Sometimes you don't know what you're hit with, and you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to go back to what we've been working. And it's like actually the thing that's getting you in more trouble, right?
So he didn't adjust. He didn't adjust to Lawler's adjustment, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. Now that's easy for me to say sitting on a lawn chair in my backyard. Like, I'm not in a fist fight for a world title and 25 minutes deep, right? And Rory's, unbelievable. So, I'm sure they've made the adjustments,
right.
but
you're right. Hey, listen, you fight the way you train. So if he trained like that, and if he made that muscle memory, and that was, he was going to the well with that, that's what you're asking. The tape could hurt you. There's something about, having a game plan, but being able to go to plan B or C or D if you have to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. My coaches and I talk about it. I kind of like just said it in not my last fight, but the fight before, my post-fight interview. And my striking coach, Kruel Lin, absolutely loves it. He's like, I said something about like, people were saying like, is this the game plan doing this against him? I'm like, look, man, I like to jam. Like I practice my chords, I practice my scales, and then I just like to get out here and play. You know, like I know how to use my crafts. I know how to use my tools. I have some things in mind. I know what I need to watch out for, but otherwise I'm like very feeling based. I feel what's in front of me. I feel what is open, or what I think I can create, rather than like stick to a rigid script. And I'm like, I'm going to push kick, and then I'm going to fake push kick and do this. And then I do this. It's like, no, man, I know how to fight. I know I train very, I make sure every stone's turned. We're doing the right things. I believe in that. I can go out there and play.
Now, let me ask you now, because I read here that your younger brother, Jeff, is a professional hockey player. Yeah. And you being from Canada, see, right now, after the other night with that finish in Canada, everybody cheering your name. You're like Captain Canada. Everybody's cheering for you. It was a beautiful thing. Your family, I'm sure, is very proud. But let's take it back to younger Jeff. Your younger brother Jeff is it like he was the golden boy? He's gonna be, Canada, they love their hockey. And you're like the black sheep fighting in a cage. I don't know. How do you, because you seem like a nice, clean-cut kid. What are your parents, how do they take all this in? What does your family think of all this?
I think to a mild degree, that kind of was the format, where it's like, Jeff's going to be probably a professional hockey player. He played, he went to Cornell for hockey. So like for university to play hockey there, got recruited to Cornell, like goes to Ivy League school. I went to university too. And, I wasn't, necessarily like a troublemaker or anything, but I'm sure there probably was, especially early on with my parents, like, what is this kid doing? Like, when is this phase going to be over? And he's going to like, get a job and pull it together. I'm like, no, man, I'm pretty committed to this. And they've been supportive all the way through. Despite it clearly not being what they had wanted for me the most, which I can't blame them. I don't even have kids yet, and I don't really want them to fight MMA, but it's a wild sport, but they've been supportive all the way through. But now, like, obviously, I think really since kind of Contender Series, it's been easier to see, like, oh, like my coach is telling them, oh, he's really good. They're like, yeah, sure. And I'm like, no, I'm coaching these really high level guys. They're like, okay, yeah, I'm sure you're pretty good at this. And then get signed to the UFC. They're like, oh, wow, maybe he is actually good at this. And then like after each win, and finally with this one, I think it is like a bit more of a realization. And, they tell me they're proud of me a lot and believe in me. So it is pretty awesome now.
How do you feel? Oh, I'm sorry, Jim.
No, go ahead, Matt.
I was going to ask, hockey could be a pretty rough sport. Not as rough as fighting in a cage, but it's rough. Well, you show your brother any fist? You don't have to show him any flying arm locks, but you show him any fisticuffs, any elbows he could use on the ice rink there, in the ice rink there.
Dude, we're heading to the gym after this. So he's home for the summer, and we train together in the summers. He comes to my striking gym, and he just works boxing. But he was in half a dozen fights this year on the ice. So
fight more than you. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, he fights more than I do. Exactly. Yeah, he fights more than I do. So he puts the work in. Just like he's like, no, that's going to be an asset of mine on the ice. Is like if something goes down, I'm going to be able to drop dudes. So. He's not scared to mix it up. He drops the gloves pretty consistently.
Isn't it crazy in a hockey fight to get their balance is so difficult on the ice to watch two guys just hold each other's jersey to keep balance and to stay close and just hit each other with the free hand. And it's got to suck for the guy who's using his strong hand to hold the jersey and throwing with the the hand that you don't want to throw with.
Yeah, I feel like that's especially weird when guys fight in hockey in an open stance, when a lefty and a righty line up and their lead hands are grabbing each other, because it's just open traffic. At least on the other side, you can kind of impede the other guy's shoulder a little bit and hide behind your shoulder, where like they throw a right hand, you kind of stuff their shoulder and hide your head and then come back. Whereas like the open stance is just two dudes both pulling each other's heads forward and stalking each other, like power shot. Open stance is wild on ice. There's definitely like, it's got to be so difficult to fight with being on ice on skates, like just the balance alone. is wild. And then another thing that we try to factor in with him is like, you know, I'm like, okay, measure my distance and figure out this guy's timing. He's like, dude, it's a 20 to 40 second sprint and then it's over. Like, it doesn't matter if you gas, like you guys are just sprinting at each other. So we try to keep that in mind where it's like, there's no feeling out process. How do you get essentially like a series of 5 sucker punches in before this other guy is set? And
there's
that
no
way
feints.
you're already like, yeah,
not a lot of feinting. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but he has decked a few guys this year. I always forward them. They come up on Twitter for me. So I always like forward them to my striking coach and he always gets so pumped. He's like, oh dude, your brother's a beast. Like he loves my brother. Right. So it's pretty sweet sending those over to Cruellin.
And those don't get broken up right away sometimes because everyone's on skates. And a lot of times the refs are like, fuck this, we're not going in. And they have to wait until there's a moment where they can get in there. But these guys will go. Any other sport, they break it up immediately. But in hockey, it's like, you guys are going to go for a few seconds until we see a chance to get in there safely and stop it.
Dude, I love that about hockey and like the other main Canadian sport, lacrosse, right? It's just like, they're just the 2 most Canadian sports. And I think technically Canada's national sport is lacrosse actually. But it's just like, for some reason, those sports just have free reign for fist fights. Like if any of this ever happened in any other sport, it would be like, what, you know, people are having meetings like, what do we do to make sure this never happens again? How do we reprimand these men? How do we set an example for the kids? And then you go to a hockey game and just like, that's when everyone stands up. They're like, let's go. And the dude sits in the box for 5 minutes and he's back on the ice and the boys are having a beer after the game. You know, it's pretty sick, man. I love that hockey's just like, look, you can't let this guy push your team around. Drop the gloves, work it out, settle the score, set the tone for the rest of the game and back at her. I love it, man. I think it's so badass.
It is crazy because when you do think about it, if it happened in baseball or anything, soccer, they're a bunch of pussies.
Yeah.
Soccer, they do a little thing, they fall, they're like, they're doing the fouls. It's like, easy.
Like I get that that's part of the game, but come on, man. Like, have some fucking dignity, dude.
It's like in those jiu-jitsu tournaments when some of the guys would do, there's no leg locks and
the reap.
They'd force a reap.
They force the reap and then
they'd go, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
I don't know. So Jimmy's doing jiu-jitsu now. You'll understand what that means soon, Jimmy.
The forced reap is one of my like biggest pet peeves in combat sports, where it's like, bro, come on. Like, don't get me wrong, you can get your knee blown out if a guy Z-locks you well, or like reaps like the Jake Shields, Cub Swanson at UFC's quintet match, right? Like
he also went into that the wrong way. Yeah, I was there. I don't like that.
Yeah. But like, come on, man. The guy like crossed your hip line and now you're going to cry about it and limp off and then have another match 10 minutes later where you're fine. Like, get the fuck out of here, man.
Yeah, I've seen plenty of matches like that. There was no neck cranks. I remember there was a guy, Brazilian guy, like sat into a neck crank. He's like, hey, it's like, dude, when you win like that, it's like, where is the honor?
Yeah.
There's no shame. They just want that fucking medal.
It's the same it's the same guys that no one showed up for their bracket, so they get gold and they're like biting the gold. It's like, dude, no one else showed up, you dork.
Let's hear about the matches. Exactly.
How are you feeling at 170 too? Is this where you're going to stay? And what finally brought you to 170 where you were like, this is completely comfortable and I'm not going back down?
Yeah, I'm staying at 170. So I was kind of forced to move up to 55. I had that fight against Dawodu. And then I did one more at 45 just as like a chip on my shoulder because I missed weight. And I was like, I have to do it again and like make weight.
Right.
And the few hours between getting on weight and sitting in the back and waiting to get on stage, there was like a period of time where it was still like an hour and a half out. And I was like, I don't know if I can weigh in. Like, I might need to go to the hospital. Like, this is not just like I'm dehydrated. This is bad. And so I fought that fight to a draw. Again, underwhelming performance, kind of definitely the two worst performances in my career. And I was like, look, man, you can't just, like even right away, like I tied up with the guy. We went against the fence and I went to move him and I just felt so flat. I was like, I just don't have any pop in this fight. I'm like, I can't do that anymore. So I didn't put on any more weight. I went up to 55, like staying the same size and felt great at 55. I had one fight with that one, felt explosive, felt great. My weight bounced back up perfectly. I knocked the guy out in like 30 something seconds, 36 seconds or something. And then I took that kind of couple of years off and just did jiu-jitsu. And again, I was focusing on competing at ADCC, and the closest weight was 77 kilos. So I was trying to bulk up a little bit for like, which is like 169, I think. So I was kind of like bulking up for that and going to do like a small cut to 170 to compete. And so I was like, well, I'll start doing some strength conditioning. I'm not really doing any striking anymore. So I'll just wrestle and grapple. And when I was doing striking, I'll do like strength training instead, and kind of like had some fun actually lifting and putting on some size for, you know, being more athletic, but then also the vanity of it. I liked looking bigger, man. It feels good to feel a little bit more jacked, not be a skinny little, you know, not have just a pair of getaway sticks, you know? So it was cool, man. I felt good putting on a little weight, and honestly, I don't lift much anymore. You know, most of the lifting I do is other people in wrestling. That's most of the strength conditioning. But when I decided to go back to MMA and just, you know, I was like up too much to fight at 55. I probably could have found a way to make it, but it's one of those, like, you'd have to transform your body. Like, I probably have to lose like 8 pounds of muscle. It's like, at this point, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
And, you know, I've felt the negative effects of overcutting, and you think like, well, I'm going to be bigger for the weight. It's like, but your whole camp is based around making weight. You know, you get to the point where you're like, all right, which sessions am I going to be able to go all out, and which sessions am I going to have to basically phone it in because I'm on, you know, a ridiculously low amount of calories every day. And I'm not recovering. Versus now it's like, what's that?
I was going to say, I'm sorry. I was going to say, you don't seem small for the weight class. What's your height? How tall are you?
I'm 6'1", so I'm not short for the weight at all.
6'1"?
Yeah.
Shit, man. I got the welterweight title. I'm 5'6". I'm up to your nipples, Mike. Like, growing up in Canada, were you a fan of the great George St. Pierre?
Dude, I had the George St. Pierre poster on my wall. I had the signed picture. I met him when I was 15. So I had this picture to Mike, George St. Pierre, like, walk up to him like, excuse me, sir, can I get the autograph? Dude, that was yeah, I was a huge fan. Yeah. That's great. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a huge fan of yours too, Matt, but that was a sad day in high school when George St. Pierre fell. Oh man, that was a hurtful day.
Well, I'm sure the next following year was a great year. I'm sure you had a fucking kegger when I went to Montreal. I'm sure you guys had an all-nighter there. That was the party. Oh, I still hear the F.U. Sarah in my dreams. But yeah, he got his revenge. But what a great guy, George. I just get texts from George, no words, nothing. It's just trailers of the latest Star Wars series that's coming out. So the other day I got something for Ahsoka. He's a nerd like me. This is what we do.
Yeah. There you go, man.
Yeah, we're old enemies. Now we talked about sci-fi.
But dude, that's friendship, man. Like,
oh yeah.
You know, my people laugh at me. I'm like, I don't really talk to my friends, but like I'll send Feely a meme every day, or like something like that back and forth, or some like song reference or some show reference with like my best friends down in the States, where it's like, when's the last time I've actually gotten on a call with these guys? Like, it's been a while, but we're that's like male friendship, I feel like.
Do you when you fight somebody, do you have to have any kind of feeling about them going into it? Guys are very different with this. Some guys can literally like have no animosity. Some guys need there to be some animosity. Like, you know, Sam Alvey could like literally could fight his roommate. Like, he's one of those guys that doesn't need anything negative to get in there and fight, and some guys do.
Yeah. No, definitely not. I mean, Johan Lanus was the fight before Fugitt for me, and we're friends. We trained together briefly for our debuts. And, you know, I thought we were going to fight actually before we both got to the UFC. We both were, he was the champion for CFFC and I was fighting for them. So I thought we were going to end up fighting. And then we both got called up to Contender Series, and we kind of laughed about that and trained together, and then got matched up against each other. I think we just both had, like, you know, people were kind of ripping on the UFC, being like, why'd you put the two Canadians together? But people didn't know what was going on behind the scenes, where it was like, he was my like third or fourth opponent for that fight, and he had another fight originally, and his guy pulled out or got hurt or something, to where it was just like, I think it just got to the point where the matchmakers are like, you're like the two welterweights that are looking for fights right now. Like, I'm just going to put you together. You know what? It definitely wasn't like a plan of like, no, we're going to put the Canadians together. It was just like, that's by default what ended up happening. But no, I like that guy a lot. He's cool, man. And we talked after the fight. We've been messaging like about potentially training together again, and happy to help him or, you know, have him come out as a good sparring partner. But no, man, it doesn't matter to me. I don't need to hate people at all. This is a sport for me. And the biggest actually factor I think is, for me, my opponent has very little to do with this in my mind. Like, this is my journey. This is my story. It's my fight. Like, I'm in there for me. I'm not in there for him. It's like the same reason I don't necessarily have like guys I'm like dying to fight. It's like I have goals that I want to achieve, and I envision things. In some ways, there are guys who help you achieve those goals more than others, guys with like bigger names or higher rankings or whatever. But it's not like I'm dying to fight a particular guy. They're just like a nameless, faceless person to me.
And you're being like, they were talking very, very highly about you, and you're this very, like they said, you know, he's for real and a new prospect. And what's next for you, and who are you looking at? And you know, do you feel any additional pressure, or has maturity kind of taken that angle of it away?
I think maturity and training has taken a lot of that pressure away. Both the physical training, making sure we're turning every stone, but also I've been working with my mental coach for about 11 years now. And we've really picked up the amount of training we've been doing together, the amount of exercises. Like, I put a lot of mental training in outside of my physical training. I feel like that helps a lot. Like, one of his go-to sayings is like, pressure is a perspective. It's what you make it. And that's how I felt last week. Was from some perspectives, there was an immense amount of pressure on me, right? I'm the last Canadian holding it down. People are saying all these like kind things that I want to have people say about me. Like, maybe you're the next guy out of Canada. You're we've been waiting for a good Canadian to come out. Like, I like hearing those things, and I like hearing my name in that conversation, and I don't want that to go away. You know, not that, again, other people's opinions aren't the be all and end all, but I can't sit here and pretend like it's not a nice spice on top of the meat and potatoes of the rewards of fighting and what makes me want to do it. But there could have been a lot of pressure, you know, especially considering like the guy I was fighting. Everyone's like, oh, nobody knows who this guy is. They're just giving him some can. I'm like, no, this guy's very good at fighting, and no one's giving him a shot. So not only do I have to beat this guy, but if it's even like remotely competitive, it's going to seem underwhelming. So it's like, it's like Contender Series again. It's like, not only do you have to win, you have to look good, and you have to be entertaining, and you have to show the people what they want to see. Like, it was a lot of pressure, and you know, having 20,000 Canadians screaming the whole time, and people wanting to meet you all week, and all the media. Like, I've never seen a fighter, all the fighters I cornered, I've never seen anyone do anywhere near as much media as I did last week. Like, it was all day, every day was packed from like when I wake up until we went to train in the evening. Like, it was so much media. And I was really glad that I was able to like stay focused with that. You know, I kind of tried to embrace that, knowing that like, well, if you do your job well, this should never change. You should have this much media. We shouldn't have any free time throughout the week anymore. You don't have things to fill the week. It should be media like this moving forward. That means you're doing your job right. So get used to it. And
it was also about the Canadians were 4-0, I think, by the time you fought, right? Weren't you the final Canadian fighter?
Well, yeah, the fifth is Deanna. She's from Romania.
You were the fourth, right?
Yeah, so I was the fifth. Yeah, so I was the fifth.
Oh, you are? Yeah, they were 4-0, and then it was you.
Well, no, it was five. So it was Deanna Belbita, Kyle Nelson, Jasmine Jazdavicius, Eamon Zahabi, Marc-Andre Barrio, and then me.
Oh, there was six?
There were six of us, so we went 6-0. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
That's
wild. So yeah, it was like there's that pressure too. Like all camp I had considered that. It's like, okay, there's 5 other Canadians on the card. At the time, there was 6. One of them had to pull out. It was Hakeem Dawood who had to pull out, unfortunately, but he was the other one on the card. I'm like, okay, what scenarios are there? Like, not only are there 5 other Canadians, but 3 of them are like good friends of yours, Deanna, Kyle, and Jazz. Like, how do we what possible scenarios are there walking into the cage, and how do you feel doing that, and how do you get past any negatives that might be associated with this? Like, 2 of my cornermen cornered 2 of the other earlier fighters. Okay, Cruellin's your striking coach, and he's cornering D and Kyle. Like, there was the side of like, okay, if everyone goes 5-0 and you have to be the 6th, what's the pressure there where you're like, you're the last one, you can't ruin the night for everybody. You have to hold down the fort. You have to be the one to put the final nail in the coffin. You have to hold it down. Or everyone's lost. Not a single Canadian has won. And if you don't win, everyone's going to be bummed, and everyone's going to say that Canadian MMA is dead. And it's just going to be a bad look for the country. And it's going to be a bad, feel for the country for the night. I can't let that happen. So there's that. Or there's a mix of people winning and losing, but wow. Kyle Nelson and Deanna Belbita are cornered by my striking coach, Cruellin, and Jasmine Jazdavicius is cornered by her boyfriend and my wrestling coach, Chris Prickett. What if they lose or get hurt and have to go to the hospital, and one of your coaches has to go to the hospital with them? So you lose a coach. You're down 1 coach. You're down 2 coaches. So now you have 1 coach in the corner. Like, what happens then? How do you feel then? How do you make the adjustments? Like, how do you go in still staying focused, knowing that your friend's on their way to the hospital, and you have to and maybe they're fucked up. You're like trying to stay in the moment and get in the zone, and you're like, one of your close friends is hurt and going into surgery, or something crazy. Like, how do you stay focused with that? So we went through a lot of visualization and mental tools in order to prepare for those scenarios. So I felt really prepared even in the moment, shit, all right, everyone's won. You can't be the only guy to not hold it down. But I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, it's a fist fight in a cage, and none of that external pressure changes what's going on in there. I have 1 man in front of me. I'm fighting him the same way I would, regardless of all these of potential sponsors, of how my career might go if I win in front of the fans, where I am on the card, whatever. None of that actually really matters. It's all external bullshit. Stay focused, go and beat this dude's ass.
Your brain, I can tell, works. Like you like a lot of options, and your mind probably turns things over a great deal. So when you're fighting, is that like a time when your brain finally turns off a little bit and you can just kind of focus on reacting as opposed to thinking everything through with many angles?
Yes. So I that's one of the things that I enjoy about fighting, and I've really grown to enjoy it since coming back to MMA and being at welterweight, is I feel like I'm a bit of an overthinker. And it's an asset and a detriment depending on the time, right? In life, and I feel like most people are like this, where you're always kind of looking ahead. It's like you try to be present, but there's always okay, I'm going to, after this interview, I'm going to the gym, and then I got to pack for this thing, and we're moving in a couple of days. Okay, I got to do this and that. So there's always a little bit of extra stuff in your head. When I'm in training camp, that vision is almost always for, at the time, June 10th. Okay, we're June 10th. Okay, does that guillotine work June 10th? Okay, that takedown that I got, how efficient was it for June 10th? Is it practical for this guy's style of defense? How does this play into June 10th? Everything is measured against the measuring stick of June 10th. By the time I get in the cage, I'm like, there's no looking ahead because we're here.
Right.
There is no past this right now. You'll be a new man when you leave the cage, and that guy will deal with everything after this. Right now, everything you've prepared yourself to do is for this moment. So be present. And I think I do a really good job of shutting my mind off and relying on instincts when I'm in the fight. Again, when I fought the Hakeem fight, I was all in my head. And that was one thing my striking coach, Cruellin, and I talked about after that fight and after my Bellator fight against Tomas Dion that went to a draw. I was telling him everything that went through my head. He's like, dude, you're thinking way too much in there. I'm like, well, that's how I am. How do I shut off? He's like, you've got to empty the glass. You've got to rely more on instinct. The thinking should be done weeks prior and years prior. But when you get in there, we're not thinking, which was such a weird and intimidating suggestion where it's like meditation. It's shut your mind off. It's okay, well, now I'm thinking about how I'm not supposed to be thinking right now.
Right.
It's tough to do, but I feel like focusing on just one thing at a time and focusing on what's in front of you makes it a lot easier. And I think the last couple fights, especially, I've done a really good job of just feeling silent in my head, hearing my corner, feeling like the crowd, elevates my performance, not takes from it. Like I will obviously fight at the Apex if they want me to, but I want to fight in front of crowds. I want to fight in Canada. I want to hear 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people screaming. I like that now. Like it makes it even, I feel like it makes me even better. It raises my standard rather than a lot of people are, gym heroes, and then they get in the cage in front of all those eyes and you just see them crumble and see those legs swell up and those hands shake. It's like, I love it.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing. Like everybody's like, oh, I know my buddy from school. Yeah, he was a tough guy. He could have done that. Yeah, a lot of these guys that fight at the drop of a hat, drop of a dime. I don't know if the drop of a hat.
You could drop either, yeah.
You could drop either, actually. And those guys that fight, really quick in the street, that's very impulsive. But you take that same guy, you say, oh, you're going to fight this same guy, and you're going to fight him a week from now in front of 50 people. Most of those guys wouldn't even show up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a big difference between having an organized fight versus a professional than getting a bump at a club and smacking somebody and then getting it broken up, and all of a sudden you're a tough guy. I don't know.
No, you do know, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think it's because it's the exact opposite. They are opposing frames of mind, where one is a complete lack of control in that I feel an instinct and I'm going to explode and go toward that and just lose my mind and seem like a tough guy. Whereas mixed martial arts is the exact opposite of that. It is the most control. You have to control who you are. You have to control those feelings, because I've seen guys at fights, seen my buddy at heavyweight fighting another heavyweight, and him in the back 3 hours before coming up to him and screaming, I'm going to fuck you up. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And he's going off. And I just whisper in my buddy's ear, I'm like, he's about to have an enormous adrenaline dump. When he gets in the cage, he's going to be flat as fuck. Just chill. He slumped into the cage, like looking like he needed a nap. And boy, did he get one. You can't lose it like that. You can't succumb to your emotions. You have to harness those.
And you can't try to scare with a mean mug another professional. I mean, as a guy who doesn't fight for a living, the things that would work on me are not going to work on one of you guys. A guy pretending I'm going to kick isn't. Uriah Faber, years ago, I interviewed him, said, I don't know what this guy was talking about. Like, we're going to fight. What's the use of talking? We are stepping in there to fight. It's going to be settled. So all that shit beforehand means nothing.
While we're talking, I was going to say, while we're talking about control, I got to just point out Patsabatini the other night.
Oh,
man! I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's like a flawless victory. It was just control, and then put him away. It was just so. It was very one-sided, and wow. I mean, he just looked like a man on a mission. So I was impressed with several guys the other. You see the fights, Mike?
Dude, so Sabatini and I have fought on 2 cards together. One was the Fury grappling match in December. He grappled Alex Caceres. And then both of our fights right before the UFC and Contender Series were on the same CFFC card, and he was the main event. He won that one by armbar. Other than the Damon Jackson front kick loss, all of his fights have been like that. He is so good at controlling the narrative of a fight, forcing grappling exchanges in low risk ways. Like, it's not in a boring way. He's just like, he's so efficient at finding a way to get you to the ground, to force you to 4-point, to put in a leg ride, to put in a hook, to put in cross body control, chip away at you. He's in no rush. He almost never takes a step back. He is one of my favorite guys to study. I really like Pat Sabatini. He's very high level. I've also studied him because one of my closest friends, Gavin Tucker's supposed to have fought him a couple of times and been out with injuries. So I've ended up studying him quite a bit for that. But man, he's so good, man. He's really good. And he's got solid striking, but he clearly uses it more so just to get to his grappling exchanges. But it's extremely effective because he stays safe. He, again, other than the front kick knockout loss, he doesn't seem to eat a lot of shots. He's really good, man. I like watching him.
Also, we had he was fantastic. I mean, like a pit bull. Armin Sahukian was on our show the other day.
Yeah.
And listen, when he fought Joaquin Silva.
Yeah.
Not Phoenix. What a fucking
He fought Joaquin Phoenix.
what the fuck's the matter with me? I'm so happy I got Joaquin down. I'm like, wow, Phoenix. Joaquin Silva. And Silva was game. He was very game. And he actually, one punch he hit Armin with, it literally looked like a Looney Tune. All of a sudden a bump came out of it.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, what I like about that is Armin Sahukian looked phenomenal, and that punch showed, all right, man, he got hurt with that punch. Mm-hmm. It showed he had to deal with a little resistance in there, It wasn't so. Sometimes that's good, man. Some perseverance where he got hurt, but then he overcame and ultimately just got that finish. And he looked really good. I mean, sometimes I like seeing guys not get such an easy the win looked. Almost besides that punch, it was practically flawless. I mean, it was really good. So, he had to overcome a little bit of an obstacle by getting hit, and he did it. And he did it fucking with flying colors.
Oh yeah, he's another one of my favorite guys to study. He's so good at controlling where the fight takes place. He's got solid. He's super well rounded, solid striking, really high level fight IQ. Isn't afraid to go for it. Like if he wants a single, it's not just like, okay, I'm going to get this takedown as efficiently as possible. Like he'll chase it down too. If you start escaping, he'll chase it down hard and then start, only pace himself when he's in control. I mean, obviously the Islam Makhachev fight, the debut, was absolutely incredible. The fact that he was able to step up. I think did he take that one on short notice?
Short notice, yeah.
Yes, he did. He said with a proper camp, he said it'll be different. He was in that fight too.
Bro, that was a very competitive fight. Very competitive. And he was like 22 at the time or something, right? 21, 22? He was a kid. Then next fight beats Mercier, who is PFL champ now, like absolute beast out of Canada, and another very high-level grappler with a baseball bat of a rear left leg. Like he won that fight. I'm trying to remember the details of that fight, but he looked great in that one. Dude, he is the only speed bump recently has been Matthias Gamrot, who's an absolute animal as well. And that fight was just like the Makhachev fight, like razor close, back and forth, 5 rounds. Neither guy could really solidify position on top because they're both high-level scramblers and high-level grapplers. But that was like, if you want to enjoy grappling, that's watch Sarukian fight, watch Gamrot fight, watch Islam fight. Like those guys are the ones where it's like, no, and Sabatini, it's like, no, grappling isn't boring. It's not just dudes holding each other. Like those are guys that are really good at what they do. They are bullies and they get finishes.
And what do you think of, yes.
Okay. Oh, you're about to ask? I don't know if you were going to ask the same things I'm about to say. You wanted to finish what you're going to ask?
What I was going to say is, what do you think about the rest of the welterweight division, and who do you have your eye on? I mean, Ian Gary is fighting Jeff Neal. That's coming up, I think, over the summer. What's that, 292? Am I crazy to say 292?
Yeah, the Boston card, right?
Yep.
August 8th or something?
Yeah, it might be, yes. It's Aljamain against O'Malley. What is your goal for next, and how do you see your path going if things go the way you want them to go?
So I think there will be top 15 kind of conversations right now, but I'm not going to get in the top 15 with the wins that I've had so far. We need to step up the level of competition. I think what makes the most sense right now is someone who's just outside of the top 15. I think especially like a veteran would be a good call, like someone who's been around for a while, just because, Mickey had been around for a while. And then the last 2 guys were kind of like, newish comers to the UFC. So someone who's
Brown. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
What's that?
I got too excited. Now I'm starting to think of you're saying a vet. What about Matt Brown, man? Shoot.
Hey, man, he's never scared of a good fight, man. That would be a great one. We kind of did like, I had some guys like push me like, bro, you got to call somebody out. Like you're trying to get on the Canadian card. We got to start calling people out, and kind of like push me to my comfort zone of like, all right, I'll call these guys out. And they're like, let's make a list of 3. And they did Ian Gary, Tim Means, and Matt Brown to try and get for the Canadian card. And then later they were like, well, what about calling out Robbie Lawler? I'm like, fuck, all right, let's call out Robbie Lawler. But I feel honestly kind of like a dick calling out the like OGs, where it's like Matt Brown doesn't need to fight me to prove that he's tough, man. Like, this dude's been in the UFC since I was in fucking high school. Like, this guy's an absolute badass. If those guys are down to fight me, I'm super down because I've been fans of those guys for a long time. And I think it'd be cool for the Canadian fans to see me fight someone whose name they recognize. But, you know,
why not Jack Della Maddalena?
He's fighting Sean
he has
Brady.
Somebody. Okay.
Yeah, so he's fighting Sean Brady.
Shit, man.
That's gonna be a killer fight, man. That fight's gonna be good. Because Brady's a Henzo guy too, right?
Yeah, he's under Daniel Gracie.
Daniel Gracie. Yeah, okay, yeah. That's gonna be a sick fight, man. That's one that I'll have my eye on for sure. That's gonna be good.
Don't be such a nice guy, Mike. You're such a nice Canadian guy. Listen, Matt Brown, man, he'll listen to this. He'll put some dip in his mouth and he'll get excited. That guy, he's made for this shit. He wants to show that he can take these young studs. And I don't know. I'm no fucking Mick Maynard. I'm just saying. I just like you were talking about vets, and I'm like, dude, that's a nice fight. That's a nice. Who wouldn't want to see that, Chitty?
Yeah. I got. So I wanna have a little bit of a break before I really get my next fight solidified. I've been in like camp for like 7 straight months. Like I did Fury grappling, and then the next day started camp for the Johan Lainus fight, and then is when I was in the back after the Johan Lainus fight, they said UFC's coming back June 10th. So I just didn't take any time off after that. So it's been since November, it's been pedal to the metal. So I want to have like at least a month of like, I was at practice today and I'm going back tonight, but just like without someone in mind where I'm like, okay, I have to prepare for this guy. But maybe we'll talk again in another month because I have 2 guys in mind. One I think would be like extremely exciting and would be like a cool fight. I just don't want to make that call right now.
Oh, Alex Moreno, you might be talking about.
Could be. He's a solid fighter too. That would be an awesome one.
Okay.
Moreno. You're just trying to get it out. Eh? Like,
I just wanted to see.
Like, tell me the name.
I was looking for your poker face. If it was, I'm
keeping the cards real. Keeping the cards real close to my chest here, man.
All right.
I want to mention because I know we're getting out of here soon, but on the prelims that Alessandro Costa versus Jimmy Flick. Jimmy Flick had a rough night. Costa was on, man. I don't know if you guys seen that fight, but Jimmy Flick was trying to bring everything out in the kitchen sink, but
that wasn't the headbutt one, right?
No.
That was elbows from half guard, right?
Yes, and it was nasty.
Yeah, okay.
Up until that point, everything was landing. So,
dude,
Alessandro Costa had a great night. I'm just wanted to point that out, Jimmy.
I saw the whole.
But hey, man, listen, I could talk all day. You know me. What else we got, Mike? Mike, before we let you go, really quick, one little hobby you like to do besides fighting. What do you like to do on a day off? What do you like to do?
Honestly, one of my favorite things that isn't combat sports related is, outside of like just nature and being active outside and stuff. I love escape rooms, man. Like big puzzles. I love that stuff. So that's like what me and my fiance do as like our hobby outside of like, oh, we've got a day off. Like, let's go find a cool escape room and do that. Like just basically like a series of puzzles. And I love that. Like I love having like a puzzle solving mind. That's fun for me. And
that's that active brain. That's that active brain looking for something to work on.
Yeah. And honestly, like MMA is kind of like a big puzzle to me that like tries to solve you back. And it's like, who's going to solve who first? And I kind of like that. It's like, it's we're both trying to disarm a bomb at the same time, and whoever disarms theirs first, the other one goes off. Like it's cool, man. I love this kind of stuff where it's like, you're working against the clock, or you're trying to figure something out. I'm like, okay, what the fuck am I doing? How do I figure this out? Like, all right, just take a second, figure this out. Like logically, what does this like? And something clicks, and you're like, I got it. Yes, that's the answer. Like, and then you move on to the next thing. I love that stuff, man. So fun.
That safe room stuff, man. I don't know, man. I might end up like the Kool-Aid man and get stressed out and be like the Kool-Aid guy and break through the fucking wall. I don't think that's for me, Jimmy.
Well, there's got to be a button to push or something, right? Like if you're like tapping out, there's a way to like end it.
Oh, they never lock you in there, except for once I got physically locked in when I went to Costa Rica, and it was like a jail cell thing on like, so you're in like an old timely jail cell thing. She's like, okay, I'm going to lock the door and leave. I'm like, dude, if there's a fire, are we just gonna fucking die in here? Like, you're not. If there's a fire in the front, you're not running back through to let us out.
Oh, is there? There has to be some kind of safe word or something.
In North America, I don't think it's legal for them to lock you in. But we were in fucking Costa Rica, was it Costa Rica? Yeah, it was Costa Rica. They're just like, yeah, we don't fucking care, whatever.
Yeah, good luck.
Shit,
yeah, right. Hope you solve it, bud. Good luck.
I like nature too. Every Monday and Wednesday, I do a little bird watching.
Nice.
Matt likes to watch little birds.
Do you really?
Nah, Jimmy's my little bird.
He's calling me a little.
I like to watch him, and I like to do this to his chin. I'm sorry, Mike. I'm sorry you had to see that last part of that. Some things you can't unsee. Hey, man, what do you want to plug, Mike? Anything you want to plug, brother?
I want to say thanks to my coaches for supporting me through this, man. That was a sick time. Obviously, like, thanks to the UFC for putting me in that position. Like, I wouldn't have any of these opportunities without them. And thanks to the Nelk boys and Happy Dad for getting behind me this one. That was awesome, man. Having like a solid crew behind me for this fight was pretty sweet, man. That felt awesome.
You had the Nelk boys with you?
Yeah, so we're starting to work together now. So I'm pretty excited about that. We're gonna be working together moving forward. Just a good Canadian connection, man.
That's
nice.
Awesome, man. Good for you,
Yeah.
man. Well, listen,
Yeah,
congrats on everything, bro. This is
Thank
great.
you, brother.
Yeah, and
You're
come
an
back and see us again, Mike. Maybe before your next fight.
I'd love to. Yeah, that would be awesome, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate this.
Yeah, great talking to you, man. Congratulations on such a great win and such a high profile win. I'm sure we'll be seeing you fight soon. Really exciting.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you having me.
All right, Mike. Thanks so much.
Yeah, Mike.
And I guess, Matt, before we go, we should promote your jiu-jitsu school. If anybody, I'm going to be going out there. I want to go out and take a lesson with the great Matt Serra. I'm just trying to do a couple of things first. I love it.
I'm so happy that you're going to be. I love that you're training. It makes me very happy. I told you that the other day we text, and I like you're lined up with the right people.
Yeah, they're great.
Jedi, Mike J.
He's awesome.
They're good people there, and I think you will love your jiu-jitsu journey. I really do.
And you know what I like the class? I've taken a couple of classes too. Like if Mike or Jamie isn't available, I want to do classes. So I'm also dealing with guys who are just a little bit above my level, who aren't trying to help me, but who are trying to submit me. And really, those guys are helpful too. Because you're walking into a class and they know more shit than I do.
100%.
And like even the other students who are just a little more advanced have all been really helpful. I love it, man. Everybody over there is great.
Dude, atmosphere is crucial with your training, with your training environment, you know.
And I wanted to promote also, sorry, Matt. I wanted to promote the Sugarloaf Comedy Festival this Saturday, June the 24th. I'll be there with Dave Smith from Legion of Skanks, as well as Jim Florentine, one of my closest friends. August 16th, Comedy Mothership, Rogan's Club. I have 2 shows. The other 4 have sold out. I have Albuquerque, New Mexico, August the 12th, and September 28th is Toronto. Every Wednesday here in New York City, Fat Black Pussycat. I do the hour. You can see all the material.
I'm going to be in Austin next week. So just so you guys know, a week from today, I will not be on the show. So let's get that. Okay. I will miss you.
Yes, sir.
And I'll talk to you before then. What else did I have to say? We got that, and that's it. I don't know. I thought I had something else, but it'll probably come to me, and I'll probably text you.
As soon as we click off, you'll think of it.
Jimmy, so much fun today.
Yeah. Thank you to Mike Malott. That was great. What a fun guy to talk to and a nice guy. And I'll talk to you soon, Matt.
Couple days, brother.
Yes, sir. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Jimmy. Bye, buddy.